This is episode 59 of the Christian Travelers Network. Today we will be talking about missions and marriage with Rachel Ampong.
Welcome to the Christian Travelers Network, where travel stories, community, and scripture combine. Hey, Christian travelers, I am so glad that you're here. We have a special guest. Not only is it awesome that she's going to be sharing a little bit about Ghana with us, but as many of you may have listened to some of my journal entries from my time in Ghana, she was actually there during that time, and she was serving and doing missions. And so God's kind of reconnected us, and she's going to be talking a little bit about that and other things. So I hope that you stick around. But before we dive into that, I want to once again point you to our website, christiantravelers.net. There you will find other podcasts, faith and travel resources, and some links to our Facebook and Instagram where we have other faith discussions. So, without further ado, Rachel was born and raised in Minnesota and is married to a super awesome Ghanaian man. As a result, she calls both Minnesota and Ghana home. Rachel is a Christ follower seeking his leading, knowing that it will be far better than anything she could dream up on her own. Hey, Rachel, how's it going?
Hey, good. How are you?
I am doing well. It is so cool how we have reconnected.
Yeah,
So, tell us a little bit about yourself.
sure. As you mentioned, I am born and raised in Minnesota. I'm now married to a man from Ghana that I met while I was doing mission work there. I currently work for a Christian nonprofit in the Twin Cities of Minnesota and love my job. I work in development for that nonprofit. And yeah, just kind of living life here, doing this and that.
Yeah. So, how did you get involved in missions or end up in Ghana in the first place?
Yeah, so I'll try to be somewhat concise with that. So I first went on a short-term mission trip with a group from my church back in 2012, not to Ghana, but to Guinea in West Africa. There were some missionaries that were living and working in Guinea at the time, and on a trip back to the US, they had visited my church and kind of shared about what they were doing there. Within that next year after they had visited, an opportunity came up for a group from our church to go and serve with them in Guinea, doing eyeglass clinics. And so right away, I just felt this immediate you're going, just like God was like, yep, you're gonna go on this trip. And um so yeah, in August of 2012, I traveled to Guinea on that trip with a group from my church, including my mom, my dad, and my brother. And I instantly fell in love with it there, and just the stuff that we were doing and the people that we met. And that was my first trip to Africa, and I was just like, why have I never been here before? This is amazing. And so while I was there, though, these missionaries that we were staying with, they were like, hey, we are actually looking for a couple of people to come and live here for a couple of years with us and teach English as a foreign language to the people in our community. So Guinea is French speaking, and then there are other local languages. And so they were like, we want a couple people to come teach English to kind of get to know people in our community. And it's also a predominantly Muslim area. And so they wanted to have people come and teach English and build relationships in the hopes of sharing the gospel with them too. So I was like, I think I would like to do that. And so I came home from that trip and immediately started looking into it, and kind of got in touch with the organization. It was the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and got in touch with them and kind of started the process for becoming, I guess they called us globally engaged in outreach, GEO missionaries. And so I started that process over the next year, and I guess I was approved to become a missionary and go back to Guinea to teach English. So I got my TEFL certification and stuff like that, and started fundraising and went to missionary training in St. Louis. And I was all set getting ready to go back to Guinea to live with these missionaries that I had met the year prior. However, it was like the last couple of months leading up to when I was supposed to go, and they had some health related issues pop up that required them to return to the US. And
Mhm.
so that door kind of closed. And so I was kind of like, oh, well, now what? I was all ready to go. And um, so the organization kind of said, well, we're going to kind of reevaluate and see what other opportunities there are for you. And so a few months later, they kind of said, okay, well, we have this new opportunity for you in Ghana. Would you, pray about it and then let us know if that's something you'd be interested in? And it was going to be, Ghana is English speaking, so it wouldn't be to teach English. And so I was kind of like, well, what am I going to do there? This is totally different than what I was expecting. And
Uh-huh.
so I prayed about it, and it was supposed to be to go and live and work at this church and school. And I was like, okay, I still feel like God is saying, like, this is different than what you expected, but this is the plan. And so I accepted, and that's how I ended up in Ghana.
That's really amazing. And then we kind of talked about this earlier, but I came for a short time and you were teaching Bible classes there, yes?
Yes.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about what some of your responsibilities ended up looking like.
Sure. So I went there with a ministry partner, and she and so we lived on the compound where the church and school were. There was a mission house there, so we lived in that house, and we taught the Bible class at the school. The school had preschoolers through sixth graders, so we taught the Bible class for the like first graders through sixth graders. So that was our main role at the school, and just getting to know the kids, and then going to visit their families and like after school and stuff like that, and just kind of connecting with them, and then also working with the church to kind of do some community outreach in the area. um, and yeah, so we just kind of were developing relationships, and just a lot of times I felt like we were just helping out, like where the church needed help or where the school needed help. And not like we were experts or anything, but just extra things that they were like, oh, we want to do this, and we'd be like, okay, let's see what we can do about it. And so yeah, that's mainly what we were doing there.
Very nice. What are some of the things culturally or are some of the unique things that you remember about Ghana?
Something that really sticks out a lot for me still to this day, that I think about all the time, and that's kind of like changed my perspective just in my everyday life, is just like how um like transparent they are with their faith. People just walk around saying, like, okay, I'll see you tomorrow, God willing. And like, I mean, that's not a foreign thing to me, that like, things are based on God's will, but like, just to hear everyone around you like address God all the time, or to just so openly talk about their faith and about God. And I'm sure you experienced or you saw this as well, just like
Yeah.
there are Christian phrases or like phrases about God, or all over the place. Like I remember seeing a sign for like a hair salon, and it was the Good Shepherd Hair Salon, or like a restaurant that's like God is good rice, like just things like that that you would like never see in the States. And I was just like, wow, that's so cool that they're so like open about their faith, and then and willing to talk about it too, not just like seeing phrases up here and there, but like you can pretty much talk to anybody about their faith, and they're willing to like strike up a conversation with you. um yeah, so that's something that has really just like shaped my worldview now too, just like how I approach things or how I look at things. Just always remembering like, no, like whatever you're doing, it's God willing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that like just the like God bless you bumper stickers and it
Yeah.
being plastered on all the signs and I think the saying Janame,
Yeah, Jane, not me.
what does that mean again?
Yeah, it's like basically like God is sovereign. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
another great, that's like a national symbol that you see everywhere there. And it's just like, wow, how cool that like something like God is sovereign. Yes, absolutely. And to just see that everywhere, then it's like, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, it isn't a taboo topic, which is so
Exactly.
different
Yeah.
because, like, we have, like, "In God We Trust,"
Yeah.
on printed on everything, but it isn't,
Hmm.
like, a part of our culture, whereas there it
Sure. Hmm.
definitely is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanna kinda pass the baton to you. What are some things that you would like to talk to or specific you wanna address?
Something monumental that has come out of like my experience there, and I mean, even going back to my very first mission trip to Africa. On that mission trip to Guinea, when we first arrived at the missionary's house, where we were staying, they had laid out Bible verses on each of our beds for us, that were totally random. They didn't know who was going to be sleeping in which bed, whatever. Um, and the verse that was on my pillow was one that I had already, like, in preparation for this trip, that had kind of like come to the surface for me. And then I got there and I was like, oh my goodness, this verse is on my pillow, like on the random bed that I chose to sleep on. And it's Ephesians 3:20 and 21. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us. To him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen. And that verse has kind of been like this theme in my life ever since then, and just like through this whole journey. And um, because there have been so many instances like throughout this journey where like I thought things were supposed to go one way, um, but then they didn't. And they went a totally different way, but now looking back, it's like, wow, that was all God's plan, and it was so much better, and it was so much more than I could have imagined on my own. I mean, like, when I first found out that I was going to Ghana instead of Guinea, I was kind of like, so it was for a year initially, and I was like, okay, I don't know anybody there. I don't even know the person that I'm like, I don't know the people that I'm going to serve with. I haven't been there. I'm I was nervous. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And I remember just being like, okay, it's just for a year. I just have to go, and then I get through a year, and then I can come home and I'll just move on. Like, and I
Yep.
remember my mom telling me, she was just like, "Oh, you know that you'll get there and you'll meet all these amazing people, and you'll be like, I don't ever want to come home." And I was like, no, I don't think so. I just need to like get through this year. And and like within my first few months into my time there, I was just like, wow, I really love it here. And like I'm meeting so many cool people. And then like after that first year, we had to come home, like at Christmas time, because our visas were only good for a year, so we had to come back to the States to renew our visas. And I remember just like crying when I had to leave to come home, knowing that I was coming back, but like just like, oh, I have to leave these people, like all my friends and all these wonderful people here for like what 1 or 2 months, however long it was gonna take. And but then like that reunion when we came back after Christmas was like so amazing and so wonderful, and I was like, yes, I get to be here for another whole year. And and then of course when that time ended and it was like time to like come back to the States permanently, that was harder than ever. um because by then, we had forged these super strong relationships with the people that not only like people we were meeting in the community, but like the people that we were living with. I mean, we were doing life, I mean, we were only two Americans living in the middle of this like community of all local people, and so we really were like doing life right along with them, and they were just so gracious and like including us in their lives and just in their community and in their culture. And um so yeah, just like thinking back to that and like, okay, so all along God had this really great plan that I had no idea about. Like, I Ghana wasn't on my radar before before this. And so, and then to now look back and think of like all the wonderful things that have come out of it. Like, I have all these incredible, like, long-standing relationships, friendships with people back there, even to this day. Like, there's people I talk to every day there. And hello, I got a husband out of it. I never could have imagined that I would meet my future husband there. And um yeah, so just like, and then obviously like lots of little things that happened while we were living there, but yeah, some like really big life-changing things that it's like this is so far beyond like anything I could have dreamt up on my own, or anything I could have imagined on my own. God is so good.
All the time.
Yes.
Um, yes, it's so cool. I feel like a lot of travelers or missionaries say, like, I had this one plan and God switched it around, and yet it turned out even better.
Hmm.
So, in terms of like if someone else would want to look into doing missions, what advice would you give to them?
Yeah. Well, I would say, I mean, I found it very beneficial to go like on a short-term trip first, I guess, or I mean, not that you have to, but I mean, that's obviously what launched me into it. And but God works all
Mhm.
different kinds of plans out for people. But yeah, just I guess like my advice would just be to like pray about it a lot and be open to whatever God is wanting to do through you. I remember a pastor that I had at the time when I was preparing to go. Actually, it was my pastor's wife that said, it's not about what we are going to do. Like we on our own can't do anything, and like there's no point in us doing any of this work that we think we're set out to do, but it's what God is doing through us. Like he takes us on the journey. It's nothing that we're doing on our own, but he takes us and just allows us. It's a privilege to be able to be a part of his mission and this journey that he's just allowing us to come along, or coming on the ride for, whatever. Um, so yeah, I guess, and I mean, there's so many different organizations and opportunities out there. Yeah, you just kind of have to do your research, keep an eye open, and yeah, overall, just pray about it and see where God wants to use you. I mean, I'm still doing that now. I've been back in the States for, like, goodness, almost 5 years, and I'm still like, okay, God, like, do you want to take me somewhere next? Or like, do you want me to go back to Ghana? Do you want me to stay here? Do like, um,
Yeah.
and just, yeah, just being patient. That's something I'm definitely learning all the time, is patience in God's plan, and just knowing that um, he's got it worked out and he knows exactly what's going to happen, and we just have to trust him.
How long did you end up serving in Ghana?
So I was there for about 2 years, for yeah, for most of 2014 and 2015.
And during that time, you met your husband?
Yes. Yeah, so he was a longtime member at All Saints Lutheran Church, where we were living and serving.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I met him pretty early on in my time there, and he was just one of. I mean, so many. There's so many young people there, and there were so many people like my age, and that I just connected with and became really good friends with, and I mean, still am to this day. And one of them turned into more than just friends, and so we developed a relationship over the next few years, and yeah, and now we're married today.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
What were some of the cultural challenges maybe of initiating that relationship?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there's tons of cultural stuff that still comes up even today, but I think just like so there's such a friendly, open culture,
Mm.
and so like just easygoing, laid back, flexible, and like here in the States, I feel like we're so, we're on a time schedule, and we have our plans, and this is what we're gonna do, and um, so I mean, this, not just for our relationship, but just in general, like learning to adapt to all of that, and and just, and then I guess for our relationship, like we just had such different upbringings. Obviously, me here in the States and him in
Mm.
Ghana, and um, so yeah, just like he grew up in a village, um, and was running around like playing in rivers and on farms, and like totally different than my upbringing. I grew up in a wonderful Christian family, but I went to a small private Christian school here in Minnesota, and just, I have a big family, so I guess, you know, we kind of had that, similarity, but yeah, very just it's still like we're still finding things all the time where we're like, oh, that happened in your life as a child, and like, and just like disciplines totally different. But it's been really beautiful too to like meld the two together as we continue to learn even more about each other's cultures, because he's here in the States now, obviously. And so for him too, just learning how we operate here and how things go here. And um, yeah, so there are so many things. I feel like it's hard to pinpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really awesome, though, that you get to bring those two cultures together in your family.
Yeah. Yeah.
For him, what has been one of like and I guess for you as well, but maybe we'll address his first. What has been one of the biggest challenges for him coming to the States and moving here?
I think it kind of, I don't know if this is the right word to use, but like the isolation. Like I feel like in the States we're so oftentimes like to ourselves. We have our own houses, we're kind of closed inside our own houses. Especially now, but even outside of the current state of things, um we're just so like life is so individual, like individual families, individual people,
Mhm.
whereas in Ghana it's so community based. um and like, families aren't just like immediate family units there.
Mhm.
Like people, I was finding out all the time, like people that I thought were family members with each other, they were like, "Oh no, we're not related at all. We're just like we call each other family, or I call this person my mom, but they're not really my mom." And so like everyone's just so like open with each other, and so I think that's probably been the biggest difference for him coming here, is that like you don't just know everyone in your neighborhood, whereas there it was like, anytime I was with him, it's like everyone knows who he is, they're all saying hi to him, and I was always just like, how do you know everybody? Like, and he's like, well, you're just like out and about all the time, everyone knows everybody. And so yeah.
When you came back to the States, oftentimes you hear about like it's almost like a cultural transition coming back to your own home. What was that
Mhm.
experience like for you?
Yeah, it was a very tough transition for me, as I think it is for many people. um I felt so displaced from American culture. And, even with like friends and family, I was excited to see them, but I just felt so like, their lives keep moving forward, and my life kept moving forward, just in two like totally different places in different directions. I'd been immersed in this different culture where things are so community based, and then I come back to the US and I was like back with my family, just at home, or wherever we
Yeah.
were. It was just like it just felt so different. And I remembered feeling lonely. Even though I was surrounded by family and friends, coming back, you just felt like awkward almost. Like you didn't know what to talk about, because like you haven't really had anything the same in your lives for the past however long it was. And yeah, I just got so used to living one way, and then to suddenly come back and immerse myself in this other culture that was like home culture to me, but totally did not feel like home culture. um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it was hard, and I spent several months um, like just adjusting and trying to work through all the things I was feeling. And um, yeah, it took quite a while for me to really feel comfortable again. Um, and then I did have the added thing of I had this man back in Ghana that I was missing terribly and didn't know when I was going to see him again. And so yeah, so it was really hard, but I had such I have to like say that I had such a strong, like wonderful church community that like they were so amazing, that like rallied around me when I went and while I was there and when I came home. And they were wonderful in just like letting you talk or talking with you, asking questions. And while sometimes it was like hard and I didn't know what to say to them all the time, like they were just there, and people were so gracious and just kind of letting you adjust on your own time. And so I'm really thankful for those people that I had in my life at that time to kind of help me adjust back. And then obviously my family was great too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's definitely hard though.
So would you say, like, if someone has a missionary friend who comes home, like, support system would look like someone just asking questions about their time, helping them process, or what would be a one thing they could do that would be beneficial?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, like, I loved sharing about my life in Ghana, and just because it was so different. And I mean, obviously, it was, like, everything to me at the time, so it it definitely helped when people would just be like, "I wanna hear about your trip," and so, there's people say there's, like, the when people ask, like, "How was your trip?" And well, first of all, people would say, "How was your trip?" And I was like, "It wasn't exactly it didn't feel like a trip." Like, I was there for a while, kind of felt like I lived there. But,
Yeah.
but yeah, I had heard people say, like, people are either gonna want the 30-second answer, the 3-minute answer, the 30-minute answer, or the 3-hour answer, like, people are either gonna want you to just say, "Oh, it was great," and they're like, "Okay, cool," and they wanna move on. Or, like, some people wanna hear a little bit more, or some people wanna, like, actually sit down with you and hear stories or see pictures. Like, I loved sharing pictures and telling people, like, "Oh, this is my friend so and so, and this is my friend so and so, and they were awesome," and, and these are some of the things that we did together. And um, so I loved actually sitting down with people and talking about those things, and people that were actually interested in seeing photos and hearing stories. And obviously, like, not everyone needs to be like that, but it did help when there were people that were there that really wanted to know those things and would take the time to just like let you kind of rehash those stories. It just helped with the adjustment of being back. So it wasn't like suddenly you're back in this culture and like you just gotta go forward. It was like kind of it just eased the transition.
Well, one of the questions that I always love to ask our guests is what has been the biggest God moment in all of your travels?
Oh goodness. Well, there have been many. um, I guess a more somewhat recent story of just an example of something that, like, a time where I was very anxious, and God totally just like blew my anxiety out of the water, just like he took care of it all. So when I was traveling back to Ghana in December of 2018, I was going to get married. And so I had to renew my passport like just before that trip, because it was going to expire. And so I was like, oh, I just got to get my new passport and then I'll be good to go. My visa is still good. And so I got the new passport, and then it was like a couple days before my parents and I were leaving to go back. And I had my new passport, and then I was like, "Oh, but my visa is in my old passport, but it's still valid. But I should just check and make sure, like, you can bring two passports, right? I'm not sure." And so, I start going on the internet and looking like, can you use a valid visa in an old passport and bring your new passport too? And I don't know why I just started like worrying about that. And so I was like scouring the internet, and kept seeing so many things that were like, no, it's not okay. It has to be a current visa in a current passport. You can't have two or whatever. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, I'm going
Oh.
to get married and I have no time to get a new visa in my new passport. And I was like, they're not going to let me in. Like, what's going to happen? I'm like, it was too late to do anything about it, so we were like, "Okay, well, let's just go and see what happens." And, like, of course, my worst nightmare starts, like, playing through my head, like, I'm gonna get to the border, and they're gonna be like, "Nope, sorry, you can't come, and, like, you can't get married then." And so, that whole, like, that travel was, like, so like anxiety filled. I remember just like praying almost the whole time. It was like a 24-hour travel. I was just like constantly praying and like just like reading scripture, trying to like like make myself feel like at peace, and just being like, God, please let this work out. And so I was so anxious and so worried. And then we get to the airport in Accra, and it's my turn to go up to the immigration officer at the border control. And so I walk up, and I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna hand him both passports and just not say anything, just, like, just say my visa's in this one, here's my current passport. And so he started asking me questions like, okay, what are you doing in Ghana? And so I was like, well, I'm actually here to get married. And he was just like, oh, what? This is wonderful. And he was just like, oh, where are you getting married? Am I invited? Oh my goodness, this is the best thing ever. And he, like, the immigration officer is the one that like stamps your passport and says like, okay, they write in like, you have this many days that you're allowed to stay in the country for, whatever. And he was like, I'm going to give you double the amount of time that we give everyone because this is just such a wonderful thing and what a celebration. And I was like, this could not have turned out better. This was the nicest man. Like, I probably got the nicest immigration officer in the whole place. I was just like, wow, God, okay. So all that worrying for nothing. And like, but just, yes, I don't know. That's just like something that came to mind of like, wow, God is so good and like places the right people in your path at the right time. And he just, he's so good, and he's celebrating with us. And obviously this was a time to be celebrating. I was getting married, and God wasn't going to just let that all fall apart.
Yes, yes. Oh my goodness, that had to be very stressful, but
Yes.
what a blessing to get that kind of connection right then.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm incredibly curious. What did your wedding look like in Ghana? And like, how did your family? I'm getting married in a few weeks,
Oh,
and so
exciting.
yes. So, what did that look like in your family coming? How did they feel about that? Are you willing to share?
Yeah, absolutely. It was so much fun and definitely an experience unlike anything I could have imagined happening in my life. Um, yeah, so my parents had come to visit me when I was living in Ghana back in 2015. So they had actually met my husband then, and so they were very supportive and everything. So they were the only two of my family members that were able to come with, and it's an expensive trip. And
Mhm.
um so anyway, yeah, it was definitely an experience. I was dressed like for okay, so really we just had the engagement, what we call the engagement ceremony in Ghana, and then we actually got legally married back in the US. That's how we had to do it for immigration stuff.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, we wanted to be able to have a celebration in Ghana and then also in the US so that we could celebrate with our family and friends there. And so yeah, so the engagement ceremony is like traditionally it's like the male has to come to the female's like family home, and
Uh-huh.
he brings these gifts, but the female's family has given him a list of like all like kind of like a bride price, like all these things that they expect for him to bring so that he can ask to be married to their daughter. And so obviously that looked a little different for us, but it was cool because we did have our ceremony on the compound of All Saints, and I got ready in the house that I got ready for the day in the house that I lived in at the time. So it was kind of like he was coming to my home, which he also lived in the area. But um, so yeah, so the male then comes to the female's family home, and they say he comes knocking, and he meets with the parents, and he asks them like, okay, I brought all these things that you required of me, can I marry your daughter? And then they decide then and there, like, okay, like, they go through the gifts and decide if they're going to accept it or not. And so and then you have like family, what would you call them, like family representatives. And so I had this couple from the church there. They were my like Ghanaian parents that represented me along with my parents, and then he had his family and a friend of his represent him. And so we kind of you're set up under tents, but the bride doesn't come out for quite a while. um there's just a lot of back and forth dialogue
Uh-huh.
It's just like what they do traditionally. And then yeah, if the parents agree that yes, their daughter can marry the man, then finally the woman comes out, and it's like this big processional and all these people. I was dressed like an African queen, and like um they had done like my hair and my makeup, and like I was wrapped with this beautiful kente cloth, which is this traditional cloth that they have there for all kinds of celebrations and things. And yeah, so it was a lot of fun. You kind of come out dancing, and then there's a lot more dialogue back and forth, and they show me the gifts and say, should like, do you accept these gifts? And like, should we allow this man to marry you? And and I say yes. Yeah, and then yeah, then it's kind of like a reception after that. So I had this other dress made out of kente cloth that I went and changed into, and then yeah, then there's dancing, and there was the pastor there read some scripture, and we prayed, and he kind of gave a little message. And yeah, it was really beautiful, and very hot that day, but we were all sweating quite a bit. But yeah, it was such a fun experience. And I mean, definitely, like I said, something I never expected to have happen in
Yeah.
my life, but I'm so thankful that it
Yeah.
did.
What gifts did he end up doing then? And like, did your parents have to practice with their like responses to know the dialogue?
Not really. I mean, they so my parents didn't actually come up with a list, because they were like, "Well, this is totally foreign to us. We don't know. Like, what do you ask
Yeah.
him for?" And so, my, I guess, Ghanaian parents kind of like acted on their behalf, and they did all the dialogue really, because they did it in Tree, like the local language there, but then we had like English translation and stuff, so everyone knew what was going on. um but yeah, so the gifts were, traditionally you give like cloth, so because cloth is such a big deal there, they have beautiful cloth in West Africa. And so he gives a lot of cloth to the mother, and the father, and then usually there's like a monetary gift. Um, I mean, it can be anything. Like they can ask for anything, and you have to just be able to provide it. But yeah, so the gifts were like a lot of cloth. Like there was a Bible, and just like some beautiful like carved bowls and different things like that. So yeah, obviously we weren't going to ask for anything crazy. I mean, he and I kind of just agreed like, okay, we'll just do these things, just to go with the tradition. But yeah, I was just gonna say, and a suitcase. That's like another traditional thing. Like he buys a suitcase for the bride so that she can travel. I don't.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. And so when you guys got married in the States, was his family able to come out?
Unfortunately, no. Um, yeah, it was too hard to get the visas and things like that that they would have needed. So yeah, so unfortunately they weren't able to join us for that. But we did take video and things like that, so that they can at least watch and be a part of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, Rachel, I have really enjoyed having you on the podcast. This has been very interesting.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun talking with you.
I have learned a lot, and it's fun how conversation we start talking about missions. But I think I learned a lot also about marriage and the cultural differences in that too. So,
Yeah.
mm, yeah. Well, how can our listeners connect with you outside of this podcast?
Yeah. You can find me on Facebook at Rachel Ampong, or on Instagram. My Instagram handle is teeny tiny Rachel. I'm quite short in stature, so that's just what someone called me a long time ago. And so that's my Instagram name, teeny tiny Rachel. So that's where you can connect with me.
Awesome. I'll make sure to put the links in the description below. And Christian travelers, I hope you have enjoyed today's episode. And until next time, safe travels and God bless.